Welcome to the beat. I am Ari Melber. President Trump is facing a new kind of trouble and setback on a signature issue. The tariff agenda, the trade war, is now officially in jeopardy because Donald Trump again finds he may be trying to wield powers he does not have. Basically, today is very different from yesterday and the months of tariff haggling because Trump's trade war, which rests on his ability to unilaterally impose these tariffs, now hangs by what may be a thin legal thread. The man who helped bankroll his campaign is also now completely out. Elon Musk, who was demoted, is now pretty much gone and, in an almost emotional, maudlin way, seems to be reflecting on what didn't work, which is a form of him rarely acknowledging failure as he criticizes aspects of the Trump agenda. These are two big stories, so I'll tell you straight up, we're going to get to Musk in a little bit. We begin right now with the setback for Trump's tariffs. A powerful federal court has ruled today, basically as of today, from this late-breaking ruling, that Trump may not have this power. Now, I'm going to get into the details of this because there are some nuances when you're talking about unwinding an international trade war. But the core ruling is that Trump's acts were illegal, that he doesn't have the authority he claimed to impose many of these tariffs. Now, that's a big setback. But the implication of whether this ruling is carried out will take some time. So Trump lost. You can see the New York Times headline puts it simply: Trump tariffs ruled illegal by this key trade panel. How this will unwind over time, though, takes some understanding. But what you need to know today is that Trump's in a worse position than he was yesterday. He has to defend his authority to impose these tariffs. And because this is all a live wire international act with a lot of bluffing that we've seen, some other countries are already going to say, well, and we've seen reporting on this, maybe he doesn't have these powers. Maybe we can wait him out. When did this all start? Well, if you're counting, it was about 57 days ago when the president came out and had his own poster with his own sometimes arbitrary tariffs, slapping them on all kinds of countries, claiming the power. And initially, of course, the markets and countries reacted. Everybody kind of knows that. But what we're learning today is that while there are ways the presidents have tariff powers, we've reported on that, he pushed so far, so extremely beyond all normal economic and security rationales that he's gotten a legal slapdown.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
I'll set my own deals because I set the deal. They don't set the deal. I set the deal.
You know, they're getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
Sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something.
This is what I campaigned on.
Tariffs torpedoed. A U.S. court blocks the bulk of president's tariffs, ruling that he relied on power he does not have,
triggering a potential showdown that could reach the Supreme Court.
Stocks are still in a celebratory mood after that court ruling struck down the reciprocal tariffs.
The markets, including a ton of American investors, some of whom lean Republican or MAGA, they hated Trump's trade war. That's been clear, and that last sound you saw was the initial reaction of liking any court ruling where Trump is losing on this issue. So some of this is complicated. As I mentioned, some of it will take time in terms of when and how a ruling saying this is illegal will turn into pausing the actual tariffs eventually because there's legal review. But the markets already like the headline, Trump losing on the tariff obsession. And while he's gone back and forth, he's flipped, he's flopped, there have been some reversals and then some doubling down. None of that has served the long-term sort of consistent agenda of how trade policy usually works. It has stoked a level of uncertainty that has made Trump and his second term very unpopular in the American markets.
Trump's trade war wiping trillions of dollars in value from these markets.
Burning down the house to cook a steak.
I'm rapidly being liberated from my money.
Economic Armageddon. You're not feeling too good about anything, are you?
Now, it went on and on and on like that. And then it would pull back, like I showed you, the president saying, well, things got yippy, he's going to calm down. China went up and then back, but not back to zero, not back to neutral or where we were on Inauguration Day. And so that's been this sort of general thrust for about 50 plus days. What's new tonight is the change that Donald Trump now has a court saying no. And so the way this works in legal review, simply put, is they've ruled no, a loss, that this is illegal. And the administration has the right to appeal that. And so the tariffs aren't paused today. in an orderly process, they will get to make their appeal to argue that they shouldn't lose and thus try to get these tariff powers back. So that's the ruling. It accuses Trump of something that he has done in many different avenues of the presidency, more in this second term than in the first even, which is executive overreach. And they refer to how he basically tried to use laws that refer to actual economic emergencies to grab powers that you otherwise normally don't have. And if you're wondering, okay, well, is this unfair to Trump? How has this happened with other presidents when they've tried this? Well, the short answer is that when it comes to a key 1970s emergency power, it exists, but no other president has ever tried to invoke it the way Trump has for these kind of tariffs. And so the judges ruled that this sort of worldwide retaliatory tariffs basically would lack any identifiable limits the way Trump's doing them. They state that the act is pretty clear that those powers can only be used to, quote, deal with an unusual and extraordinary threat with respect to which a national emergency has been declared and may not be exercised for any other purpose. Now, in normal times, presidents don't just declare national emergencies or muse about suspending detention power rights and habeas corpus and martial law. We are not in normal times. And so this is unprecedented in the sense that judges have to decide where the line is. And I can tell you something. When it comes to national emergencies and trade powers, anything close, the tie will usually go to the incumbent president. So, for example, if you had an escalating military conflict with a country, say China, hypothetically, and the president decided to use tariffs against only that country in concert with these type of debates and emergencies, just like they've used sanctions against Russia and other countries when there are foreign policy conflicts, you wouldn't see judges say, no way, we're going to stop that mid-course. But that's not what Trump did. He went after basically all the countries, including China, extra. And we don't have the kind of targeted, relevant national emergency that the judges say today justify that. So the powers are in question, but not all tariffs, I want you to know, are affected. There are levies on cars and steel that would hold because of the way they've been organized under different powers. The wider pattern, though, is Trump invoking powers that he does not have. And I don't say that as some sort of observation or a diss, as they sometimes say. I'm just reporting what judges have found in the early days of these skirmishes. You don't have wartime powers when we're not at war. You don't get to use the Alien Enemies Act to just go after any immigration issues you don't like if you don't have an actual war or alien enemies truly invading in a military sense. That's what the judges have found thus far. Some of this, of course, will continue to be appealed. We know the Supreme Court put the brakes on the invocation of that same act, not in a close call, but twice in these kind of coalitions, where you basically have all the Trump justices joining others to tell him no. That's the starting point. Some of those cases will continue to go through the merits arguments, as they call them at the Supreme Court. That takes longer, but just like this new trade ruling, the early results are in, and they are more losses for Trump. Now, the plaintiffs in this case have a week to respond. The government is going to go on to this about June 9th and make their case that basically they should have these powers. Here's how the Times put it. There's a string of defeats reinforcing the palpable sense of worry on this issue after Trump advisors told judges that an adverse decision, which again they've now gotten, could, quote, hamstring their negotiations. The article here notes the White House had planned 90 deals in 90 days by mid-July. Very few signs that has been happening. They're not counting up in the 70s or the 80s. And a ruling like this, as the Times explains, is a further setback. Donald Trump promised a lot about what these tariffs would do for America. They have not, in these 50-plus days, been doing much other than raise uncertainty and sometimes prices, warnings from Walmart about empty shelves. And now, a kind of a denouement is the punchlines are hitting.
Liberation Day, I'm reminded of the immortal words of Patrick Henry, give me liberty or charge me an extra $10,000 for a Hyundai Elantra. The day we'll all finally be liberated from our 401ks. America's finally free from the tyranny of being able to buy stuff from other countries.
What do you think about a tariff of 100% on China? Not enough. Make it 104.
We put a 10% tariff on an island that only has penguins? Trump would have been better off tariffing that island Tom Hanks got stranded on.
How do you make sense of something like this? Well, you have the jokes. And the penguins, they may get their Liberation Day if their tariffs fall apart under both legal and practical considerations. And that's the LOL of it. Of course, on the flip side, what you have to keep in mind on a day like today is we are witnessing the difference between ideology. Donald Trump ran on an ideology criticizing what other countries do and arguing that he wanted to fix that. And that's okay. And plenty of voters heard that, and either they didn't mind it or maybe they liked it. That was up here. But now we're in the governing period. And this is the story that connects back to Elon Musk losing and leaving, which we have more on in a few minutes. Whatever the ideology, and we have rich, positive debates about that in this country, that's a good thing. There's also this competence thing. Do you have a plan that works? Do you know how things work? Do you have a plan B if your initial plan doesn't work? And if you want to be king and you declare yourself to have emergency powers that you don't have, and they get taken away and fall apart in front of everyone, it's not just the comics laughing. It might be a heck of a lot of other countries winning while Trump and America are losing. They get the last laugh. And that's not what Donald Trump said he would do with his now infamous and flailing trade war. We have Jason Johnson here on this as the penguins fly. We'll be back in 90 seconds. We're back with Professor Jason Johnson, an MSNBC contributor. Jason, I took some time to note that it's perfectly fine to have what they used to call a hawkish or aggressive trade plan. People debate that. Today, what we see is another way that the incompetence, the lack of planning, the overreach is a practical failure. And so if you liked an aggressive trade plan, that's bad because you're losing the plan. And if you didn't like it, it's even worse because you're saying bad idea, poorly executed, America loses. What do you think about that point that's new today and wasn't true a week ago?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Ari. The issue that I would have is I don't think that the execution, there is no execution that can be well done for a plan that is poorly conceived. Right? Like, I don't think Donald Trump or this administration ever made the end goal very, very clear. So there was no way they could execute this well. Were you really going to get China to capitulate on 90% of the things that we were asking for? No. Were you going to get that to happen to England? No. Did they anticipate, did they message the American people about what the impact of reciprocal trades and what a trade war would look like? No. So when you don't have a plan, your execution's always garbage, and it makes them look incompetent, even if theoretically you can make an argument that this aggressive stance has some backing.
Yeah, I understand the distinction you draw there. I think that's interesting to think about. I want to read more from the coverage of what was this smackdown. Taken together, the nation's effective tariff rate could fall to 7 from 18 if Trump continues down the path of losing this. If he can't reinstate the steepest duties that have been paused, that's according to an expert from Yale's budget lab. And then the Times notes, even then, this is sort of the legal line, there's still some leftover powers that wouldn't be expunged by this ruling, and that would still be a high tariff rate dating back to 1969 to find a higher one, which could, quote, shrink the rate of the nation's growth and still raise prices for consumers. I know everyone likes to say, oh, why do we have these limits and rules? It's pretty striking to see that if this ruling holds and they limit his powers, that's still how far he would go, taking us back to the 60s.
Right. And here's the thing. The impact of this, if you listen to what the Trump administration has always argued, Ari, is that we're going to make these things more expensive from abroad so that we can build up here. That's been his theory. That was his theory of the case, as people use the term. But here's the problem. In the short term, right, the consequences of having these tariffs this high, the some that he can get back, some that he's lost on, right? It's already having an impact on heading into the summer months tourism, right? There has been a $10 billion estimated drop. We're going to have a $10 billion estimated drop in tourism from parts of Europe alone this year because of the instability with the tariffs. People don't want to visit here. People are concerned coming in from Canada. People are concerned coming in from Mexico. And that is a negative result of these tariffs. So whether or not it ends up being a power move for him, a long-term loss or a short-term loss, the American people, all the businesses out there that make money, all the tourism around this country that usually makes money will already be damaged, and that can't be fixed no matter what a judge rules.
I hear you on that. Related is how the abuse of power is often correlated with a bad idea, which is why there are the rules in the first place. I know it's funny that in this era of norm busting, sometimes people sound like everybody wants to be a hall monitor or a cop. You know, not all rules are perfect, but some of them make sense. For example, the rule that you can't pass an executive order just targeting dissent or your opponents, because then other presidents might do it. Here's what the Wall Street Journal, Fox News sister outlet in the Murdoch empire, says about that. The abuse of executive power isn't justified under the Constitution. Trump should now cut his losses before he goes 0 for 9 at the Supreme Court. That's the Journal drawing the line there on the law firm abuse, which is just like, according to this new ruling, the tariff abuse. You keep losing if you just claim powers you don't have.
You are going to keep losing, but that's assuming that your goal was to win. As opposed to, I think some of the people in this administration, their goal is to see how far they can push things. Can we push the envelope, right? Will there be consequences? Yeah. Will there be a revolt within our own party? Will voters get mad because they're popping tags all summer because they can't afford things? Like, are they going to get mad? So I think there's still a victory in this for Trumpists and Trumpism in general, because every time they lose in the courts, they get to see how far they can go, and then they try and find another point of weakness so he can exploit whatever executive powers he thinks he has.
Very fair point, and that speaks to people who may not care about the impact. If you don't care about all the impacts on other people, then you lose to make a point because you say, oh, look at my political messaging, look at my trolling. I believe you referenced Weeby Pop and tags. Tell us the artist.
That would be Macklemore from your hometown, making a reference to the thrift shops that people may have to go to this summer if the prices on things continue to skyrocket or don't come down because of tariffs.
See, this is what you could say, oh, I like it because I like music too, but I gotta give you your rhetorical flowers. A precise reference that's in the field of austerity. Macklemore, yes, we got to go to the same high school in Seattle. That thrift shop classic speaks about how there's no shame in the game when you find good items at a thrift shop. Your point being a bad trade policy could force people to the thrift shop more than they want to go. Our hats off to you, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Our thanks to Jason. Coming up, as promised, another huge story tonight. Elon Musk was demoted. He was reduced. Now he's out. He is departing. And he's speaking in what seems like pretty honest or at least emotional terms about what he says are setbacks, why he was losing certain fights, and why he doesn't like where the Trump administration is heading on certain issues. Pretty striking fall from grace. There's a lot of revelation here we're going to get into. Elon Musk donated a lot of money. He claimed he would cut a lot of money. And now pretty quickly, his time as a big cabinet advising special government employee is over. Musk has made an official departure, posting about it online, thanking Trump, referencing something we have long been tracking, which is how even with all the loopholes and boundary testing, he had a 130-day limit in government. At Politico, they say Musk came in with a chainsaw and went out with a tweet, a nonpartisan publication knocking him. From the beginning, Musk sowed much confusion in his efforts to impact the Trump agenda, and his so-called efficiency group was not efficient even in the way it made cuts. It has been quite a trip.
I think this is going to be the most transformative presidency, perhaps since the founding of the country. It's going to be a revolution.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
We can actually find $1 trillion in savings. We anticipate savings in FY26 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. What do you think of my hat? I haven't asked the president for anything ever.
And if it comes up, how will you handle it?
Well,
He won't be involved.
yeah, I'll recuse myself.
I love Tesla.
Many false claims there. He did not recuse. They tried to hawk Teslas at the White House, even as the car company, for a range of reasons, saw its stock crash during the same 100-plus days while Musk was doing double duty. He said he would save trillions. Musk's agency, though, was caught misleading the public. He eventually had to downgrade the goals. Musk is from tech. There's a big motto about disruption. And while that might work in a business setting to some degree, especially if you don't care about firing people or well-being, something the government's supposed to care about, but it didn't work very well here.
Regulations basically should be default gone. Default gone, not default there, default gone. And if it turns out that we missed the mark on a regulation, we always add it back in.
Missing a mark on a regulation doesn't work well if you get a financial crisis or deadly emergencies. And the problem for Musk was that the type of cutting he was doing of government programs didn't work. I can show you some examples right here. We'll put this up on the screen. He was, of course, blocked in court, like other Trump efforts, exceeding authority. When people learned over time what he was up to, it was very unpopular. And then Musk, who of course is unelected, found that Republican lawmakers and people working alongside the MAGA agenda were now facing pretty strong protests, partly because of the way he was leading. Here's the hit that Tesla took. Musk's unpopular politics were part of toxifying that brand. SpaceX continued to have its own problems, and while that's part of running a business, there were real questions in multiple companies over whether his sort of part-time government job was distracting him. Most CEOs couldn't get away with that at public companies in the first place. There's the self-dealing we've told you about, efforts to leverage power to make money. And yet this is a key irony. If this were a movie, it might be unbelievable. Despite having the inside track and all the power and overseeing the cabinet meetings, this has been a period where Musk has lost more money than usual. His net worth down by a staggering 50+ billion since the inauguration alone. He has complained about what he has faced, some accountability, some criticism. He's upset that in politics, people will respond to what you do. There's also the issue of scientific advancements and how NASA will work, or education will work, or rural support networks will work when you cut this fast, this indiscriminately. And in response to what is here a provable record, what some call a failed record, Musk says he's some kind of victim.
You've talked about $4 billion a day being saved. If you add that up, it's not going to get to $2 trillion over the lifetime of Doge.
I'm sorry. I feel you're somewhat trapped in the NPC dialogue tree of a traditional journalist. We do not make the laws, nor do we control the judiciary, nor do we control the executive branch. Doge is an advisory group. We are doing the best we can as an advisory group.
His best that he can is a matter of, I guess, debate or opinion. But the other claims there were false. Fact check, false. They do write the laws. They control the Republican House and Senate, which has proved very pliant for President Trump. If they wanted to do the harder, longer work of writing laws to change funding in the future, they could have done that. Might take more than the 130 days he was allotted. But again, we're getting into the competence zone and whether they really wanted to do the hard, longer work. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are facing setbacks from some of the cuts they did rush. Now, what do we learn from all this? And is there a silver lining when you look at pushback that not only worked, but I should say worked pretty quickly? Che Komanduri has a theory. It is Che Day, once again, when we come back.
I'm worried about the power that Elon Musk has been given without any kind of election.
My concern right now, and I think I speak for a lot of Americans, is Elon Musk.
Elon Musk pushed. The people pushed back, and now he's out. That brings us to a special day around here on The Beat. It is time for Che Day. You know the man, you see the cartoon, you see the embattled flags of some of our nation's universities that you've attended. Welcome back,
Right.
Jay Komanduri.
Thank you for having me, Ari.
Having you on Che Day is fitting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, considering it's named after me, you know, what other Che could there possibly be that you could have on Che Day?
I mean, I happen to know that sometimes people call you Chai. If it were a lighter news day, maybe we could just have a chai latte there. That you know that, but it's not the same, Che. Thanks for being here. I meant what I said in our setup. It's quite remarkable that Musk is out this quickly. He has been bemoaning his setbacks or failures in public, which means he's not spinning them as wins. You have a theory about this, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, money can't buy you love, as the Beatles said. Money also can't buy you the respect of voters. It can't buy you the respect of MAGA. And it appears at this point not to be able to buy you the respect of Donald Trump. I mean, it's very interesting that this has all happened over the course of 3 months. Over those months, we have seen Musk lose billions, and we have seen Donald Trump gain billions. So his utility has declined for Donald Trump. Donald Trump now feels probably he doesn't need Musk's money anymore. And Musk believed he was invincible. You know, he's turned out he was disposable. And his usefulness to Trump is no longer the case, and he has been shown the door.
You know, sometimes we talk about this, and in my notes here, I know that one other point you raised was that you're arguing today that Musk basically served his purpose, and whatever claims they were about helping the budget or the government, he's a smart guy who thought he could excel in this universe. But you argue that Trump used him, benefited from the Twitter purchase during the campaign, benefited by being a heat shield in the last few months. And Musk ends up the loser in the equation. Explain.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to paraphrase Donald Trump, Musk thought it was going to be so easy. You know, that he was the world's richest man. You know, he had gone from success to success. Obviously, he'd be able to do this. He'd be able to take over the government. He'd be able to do what he wanted. And it would just be so easy. After all, he was a real billionaire, and Donald Trump merely played one on television. The problem for Musk is that Trump's skill set has proven more useful than Musk's skill set. Trump is a very good TV talker. Musk is not. Musk has absolutely no charisma. And one other thing was that Democrats went early and pounced on Musk. You know, you saw it with the Fighting Oligarchy tour that AOC and Bernie did. You know, it's very similar to what Jonathan Chait talked about with Biff Tannen, where you punch the bully in the mouth and the bully collapses and falls. That's exactly what happened this time.
Yeah, and I'm curious how that connects to the pushback, because on the one hand, there's skepticism of the what we might call traditional Democratic or liberal frame of get out there and fight and get organized, and it matters. You know, we talk to a lot of people around here, and there are people who feel disillusioned with that for reasons I think everyone knows. And yet, some of what looked organic, we heard from someone who organized a Tesla protest, and they said they put it up online. They'd never done a protest before. They went in Michigan, which is the swing state that went Trump. And then they said to their shock, over 100 people there. And then that pattern repeated. And so the direct action on this specific thing, did it work?
Yeah, I think it worked very well. You know, there's a famous Woody Allen line, 80% of life is just showing up. You know, the people who protested Musk showed up. And that actually really ended up making a difference. It really helped shape the narrative about Elon Musk. You know, I mean, I know we compared him to Tony Stark. Before I compared him to Lex Luthor. We should remember in Superman comics, Lex Luthor always loses. What Musk is now is much closer to Thurston Howell III, the millionaire on Gilligan's Island, where he's got all that money and it's of absolutely no use to him. everything that he has, everything he's earned, none of it seems to matter in this arena that he thought he would conquer so easily.
Yeah, because the coconuts are worth more than the currency, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and those were pretty good coconuts at Gilligan's Island, though. I will say that they looked like a very tasty fruit.
Hey, it's almost 7 p.m., Che. You're making me think of wanting to get a pina colada, but we don't do that till the beat is over, or the Che Day, certainly not till it's over.
Yeah, having seen
thanks for
White
joining
Lotus, I have sworn off pina coladas for pretty much the rest of my life.
Great references. I think you got like 5 or 6, like a double hat trick of culture there. Thanks,
You're
Che.
right.
The reason I'm
Thanks.
keeping it moving is we have Congressman Steve Cohen as we talk about what Democrats are doing, how pushback works, and protecting health care in this budget and beyond. That's next. Elon Musk's exit formally from advising Donald Trump and being a special employee could also open up a new lane in these clashes with Congress, because it was Musk who not only clashed with whether Congress had its lawmaking powers and budgets, but with Republican leadership. Fox reported a Congress member from the GOP said Musk has no place in Congress, and there was a turf war even if they agreed on certain issues. Musk also said the budget fight leads to the question, how much pain are the cabinet and Congress willing to take? It can be done, but it requires dealing with complaints. Well, this round may go to Congress, even though there are many big issues still at loggerheads, including these healthcare cuts and what the GOP budget's doing. But Musk is stepping back, which puts Congress back in the spotlight. And we're joined by Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee. Welcome.
Thank you, Ari.
Good to have you. You've been on this channel and this program many times, and you're one of the members we check in with. So while no one's suggesting there's any great solution at bay, do you think that things could be more constructive with Musk out? And do you think that even Republicans eventually bristled at his view that he could unilaterally rewrite or ignore your legislation?
Yeah, I think it'd have been better if he was never involved in the first place. He's good with cars. He's good with, well, I guess he's good with rockets. He's not been good in the last couple of weeks. And I hope he's good with artificial intelligence, because he's got a major Colossus computer here in Memphis. And it's a big deal, and we hope he's successful. But he didn't know much about government. And they just went in with a chainsaw and tried to just not went with a scalpel and destroy government, not knowing what they were doing sometimes. Because a lot of what they did, it's like Newton in physics, every action has an equal opposite reaction. And you cut something, it involves something else. And he never thought about it and didn't consider it, nor did his Doge team. And they're still there. I think they hurt government. They hurt what the safety net for people that need government. Government's a great resource for people who need health care, who need public education, who need help with food, nutrition, supplements. And they cut those areas. And the Republicans did too. So I don't know how he would differ in the budget. I mean, we do need to be concerned about the deficit. And the main way that they could have dealt with the deficit would have been not giving all those tax breaks to people earning over $400,000 a year and more. They could have not done that and given people $400,000 less the same tax breaks they'd had in the 2017 bill of Trump's, but not giving the very ultra wealthy those tax breaks, and could have put that toward the deficit. But they were more interested in giving money to their wealthy contributors than they were about reducing the deficit. The biggest deficit increase was in Trump's first term, and the second biggest will be in his second term.
Yeah, and deficit spending that goes towards the tax cuts for multimillionaires, which isn't
right
in the polling and the surveys, isn't everyone's priority. I want you to stay with me, because I mentioned we've had you on before, and there's something really interesting sort of percolating. You're the top Democrat on the aviation subcommittee. People have seen some of these high-profile plane crashes and problems. The upside-down plane in the Toronto airport you see there, although there were no fatalities. There have been more tragic incidents, the deadly crash in Washington, a rarity in American air travel, but renewing concerns. Then there's Newark Airport, which has had delays and cancellations that seem to go beyond the norm. There are Donald Trump's cuts to FAA, and we mentioned what Musk is doing in certain areas. And yet I do want to also mention, before I bring the congressman back in, flying is still one of the safest ways to get around, and American planes under a regulation are very safe. So there are all sorts of ways to address this. And that brings us tonight to a very different engagement on these topics. If you haven't heard about it, it's making waves in the culture and in the government, because there's this HBO comedy from the comic Nathan Fielder called The Rehearsal. It's gotten some rave reviews. Guardian calls it TV's most fascinating show. But it captures and tackles airline safety.
I've been staging my own recreations of these disasters to better understand what's really going on.
Sir, we are getting into cloud.
Forget it. Okay, adjust the pitch control of weather radar. Have you seen the runway? Where is it?
Sir, runway, sir, 3 o'clock.
We have the runway in sight.
Oh my God, sir.
Misapproach. Go around.
Animals will hunt in packs. Colin.
Colin.
There's no like quick release or something?
This is the beginning of a 23-second stretch of silence where Sully doesn't say a word. The chorus to Evanescence's Bring Me to Life just happens to be exactly 23 seconds long.
You are Nathan.
I'm Nathan.
I'm Steve.
Steve, pleasure, honored to meet you. Thank you for having me.
As we see, it's a mix of jokes, maybe pranks, and then reality, as you were in a discussion with the comic. Part of the reality I want to mention, we do reporting here. We asked HBO, and the company confirms, they're saying on their good faith that Mr. Fielder did ultimately pilot a 737 by the finale. So like other pilots, he's taken lives into his own hand and has developed his own expertise. You know a lot about this on the regulatory side, although, again, he's a comic, so he came to you under sort of, I guess, a mixed bag. And so we wanted to get your response. First of all, based on your knowledge of his concerns, does the show get anything right about raising these airline safety issues? Are the personal dynamics in the cockpit and the issues of mental health and therapy better addressed differently by federal regulatory agencies? Wanted to draw you out into the serious side of this conversation.
Well, I took his comments seriously, and I looked into them afterwards. And what we found is the FAA has dealt with this issue for at least 20 years, and that they consider pilots and co-pilots to be equal, and that airlines deal with the relationship between pilots and co-pilots. And I don't know that they have role playing. I don't think they have Daryl Zanuck come in and set up a show, and they have a director and all that kind of stuff. But it's serious. But the pilot and the co-pilot both want to land the plane. They both want to take care of their mission and the passengers, and they also want to save themselves. So I think that if something's really going to happen, the co-pilot's going to say to the pilot, "Hey, you need to do this." I don't think the co-pilot's going to be intimidated if it's something seriously wrong. And they mentioned the crash in D.C. Well, the NTSB hasn't given their report yet. It'll be some time before they do. But my opinion, I said it early, was that they never should have had a training flight for a helicopter in DCA and Reagan DCA Airport when there were takeoffs and landings going on. That was and they've stopped those.
You're
now.
saying in that specific incident, yeah. And let me show people, because we know you, and I think some people will know your expertise. But in the HBO show, it was this sort of funhouse mix. So I want to show where they did a dry run, what they call a rehearsal, an impersonation of if he testified. So for news viewers, this didn't happen, but they got someone playing Cohen and they got Fielder. Take a look.
You're going to have to forgive me, Mr. Fielder. I'm not following. You're saying you want pilots to kiss each other?
Pilots are not going to be kissing each other, so don't get hung up on the kiss thing.
One point there out of context is he can laugh at himself. He's laughing at others. But when he talked to you for the purpose of this, did you see it? I'm curious, as a genuine effort to explore these issues, or trying to, and we've seen this as well, make anyone, a member of Congress, a politician, a foil?
Well, that's what we were told. But seen the show or heard of Nathan. And few of my staff members had, and they liked the show and they liked him. And they said he tries to make his guests look a little strange or take advantage of them. So I was on guard. But he told us he wanted to talk about autism. And I was on the autism caucus. And so we thought it related. And we have the EVAC Act, which is getting people off planes within a reasonable period of time, which is 90 seconds if there's a crash. And we don't think that the tests that have been done by the FAA have been sufficient because they haven't had a cast of people that were representative of what you have on an airplane. Nobody over 16, nobody under 16, no dogs, no pets, no children, no wheelchairs, nothing like that. So we thought he was going to talk to us briefly with autism that they'd have in a crash.
I'll jump in.
He never brought that up.
Yeah, and he said today, actually, on CNN, that he wanted to point out similarities between what he calls autism masking and what's happening with pilots in the cockpit. And he says, you try to draw that connection, and you have an opportunity to tackle this issue, and suggesting that somehow you're not. Do you think that you are in a real debate with him here, or do you think it was a bait and switch that they used the autism reference to get the meeting, and you didn't feel he really then talked about the plane safety?
No, he didn't talk about the plane safety. He didn't talk about the EVAC Act, which he said he was going to. And it was a bait and switch. And as far as his discussions and all that, we did look into it, and it's been considered by the FAA, and they've looked into it, but they're not going to start setting up, acting role play. And I think Nathan, God bless him. I hope he wins an Emmy.
Fair enough, because the issues are serious. You've worked on them, as is your committee. He seems partly serious because he learned how to fly a commercial airline with a heck of a lot of people and know they were actors. And yet then some of the other parts, we wanted to try to get, as we do in reporting, get the answers from the source. Congressman Cohen, great to have you back on. Hope to have you back, and we will be right back. Thanks for spending time with us on The Beat.